The US is racing to end the war in Ukraine by July 4th. We'll talk about this with political analyst, European Leadership Network UK member Alexandra Filippenko. Alexandra, glad to see you and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Alexandra, today marks exactly 4 years since Putin claimed he would take Kyiv in 3 days. Ukrainians did not raise a white flag. They defended the blue and yellow one. The occupiers who believed they would be welcomed with lines of people carrying flowers instead saw lines forming at military enlistment offices. Our people choose resistance. Putin has not achieved his objectives. He has not broken the Ukrainians. He has not won this war. We preserved Ukraine and we will do everything necessary to achieve peace, not only in Ukraine, but across Europe. Looking back for years, can you recall your initial emotions and reactions when Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine? How would you describe the evolution of support for Ukraine since those first days of the war?
Well, first of all, I remember so well my first thoughts and my first feelings. And I remember me texting to my actually superior to the head of European Leadership Network. And I remember so well texting him, I don't know how to survive this. How will we live through this? And he said that we will have to live through this. So we will suffer, but we will have to. And him being a British official and being a former representative of the UK Foreign Office, he was way less emotional than me, but he understood that this will bring great suffering and great tragedy to the whole world. First of all, to the Ukrainian people, first of all, to Ukraine, but to the whole world, to the whole Europe. And I don't know if back then he realized that Europe will be fighting for Europe and Ukraine will be the front line of that fight for Europe. This is actually a fight not only for Europe as a European Union and as European countries, this is a fight for European way of life and the way of life of the Western world. Let's put it this way. We can say that this is also a fight for the Euro-Atlantic security. And because we understand that right now, Mark Rutte, as the head of NATO, as the head of the organization, understands that this is a fight that is not on the territory of NATO countries only because this is Ukraine. This is the Ukrainian people that are suffering, that are dying, that are being bombed, that are being taken hostage in Russia, because we're talking not only of prisoners of war, we're talking about civilian hostages. We're talking about people that were dragged to Russia and children that were illegally taken to Russia and that are now being indoctrinated and they are being taught to hate Ukraine and all that. These are all terrible, terrible crimes that have to go to The Hague, of course, to the International Criminal Court. And these are terrible crimes and Putin understands that these are terrible crimes. And exactly because of that, he is insisting on having in those 20-point plan or 27-point plan or 24, it doesn't matter how many points plan, a peace plan, he wants to have it written there, that all the crimes of Russian soldiers and all the crimes of Russian officers and all the crimes of the Kremlin will not be prosecuted in the International Criminal Court. He wants to see that because he understands, he knows that these are the terrible, terrible crimes. And of course, no one would have imagined that this would last that long. No one could think that this would last that long. And even when my superior, when my boss from the European Leadership Network said that we all will suffer, but we will have to go through this, we will have to survive this, I think he never foresaw that this would take us 4 years. And of course, the only reason that we are still talking about it is because of the Ukrainian people. This is the only reason. And it's history, of course, will tell how much this war actually changed the world. And I'm sure it did. It absolutely did. This this is a new world that we're living in right now. The grave changes that happened not only in Europe and generally in the world, and President Trump is bringing diplomatically and psychologically, philosophically, let's put it this way, he is bringing in the new world order, and we've heard about this new world order in the Munich Security Conference. Previously, we've heard about it in Brussels, in NATO headquarters. But in reality, we are seeing this new world order and this new world being created, let's say, by Ukraine. Ukraine, we can discuss when can Ukraine be part of the European Union officially? When can Ukraine become a part of European security? Will there be a new organization like the Coalition of the Willing that will include Ukraine about security guarantees, etc., etc.? But Ukraine has already written itself into the history of the European Union, into the history of Europe. Ukraine is already part of European security and larger Euro-Atlantic security in reality. It's just that the papers are not there. So de jure, it's not a part of the European Union. De facto, it is for a long time already. And of course, Putin understands that he needs more time he wants more time, and he believes that having more time, having more people, he believes that he can still make European countries just give up on Ukraine. And he believes that he can make the Ukrainians give up on Ukraine, actually. But we understand, we have been seeing this for all these years, and not only for the past 4 years, we've been seeing it from 2014, that the Ukrainian people are not giving up, and this is not going to happen. And even if we see some kind of an agreement, some kind of a deal that will maybe, postpone a peace deal for 49 years, for 99 years. Maybe there will be a ceasefire until July 4th that President Trump definitely wants. Maybe even if we see something like that, even if there's a stop at the front line right now, we understand that this will not be the end. This will never be the end until Ukraine gets back to the officially recognized borders, to the borders of 1991, because it can take a lot of time. It can take a lot of difficulties, a lot of difficult diplomatic negotiations. But again, we've seen that throughout history, although it might say it's terrible to talk about historical examples as, for example, occupied Baltic states, but even the occupied Baltic states that were occupied by the Soviet Union, they very fast became part of the European Union and of NATO as soon as the Soviet Union collapsed. Due to the fight and due to the belief of those Baltic states, of Lithuania, of Latvia, of Estonia, that they do not belong in the Soviet Union, due to their belief and due to their internal belief, first of all, even though they were occupied, things changed. It can take some time. It can take a lot of time. It can take years. I think it's not coincidental that we've heard a lot about, maybe there should be a ceasefire for 49 years and for the new generation to discuss it. But history sometimes makes weird, crazy, and extremely unexpected turns, so it can be much faster. And even though we might see a kind of a deal or a ceasefire that right now might not look as respectful for Ukraine and for the Ukrainian suffering, we understand that this is an absolutely different Ukraine than we've seen even 5 years ago, and especially before 2014.
Alexandra, yes, President Donald Trump intends to sign an agreement on security guarantees and ending the war in Ukraine during a high-profile ceremony, but Ukraine insists that it must first be approved by Congress. President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, stated, allies repeatedly say that Russia simply will not start another war, but that is not an answer. If allies argue that Russia will not launch another war, what concrete mechanisms can ensure that assumption holds? What would meaningful and enforceable security guarantees for Ukraine actually look like in practice now?
Well, first of all, any kind of security guarantees, for example, from the United States, need to go through Congress. This is number one, because presidential guarantees or some signed documents that do not go through Congress, they are obligatory for this president, of course, and this president, the president that signs it, can be held accountable if he is not following those security guarantees. But they are not obligatory for the next president. The next president can say, well, that was signed by the previous one, and maybe that's something that shouldn't be observed. But if it's signed by the president and if it goes through Congress, this is a law. This is a law of the land. That's not just one executive order, because one executive order of one president, one signature of one president they can overcome it with the signature of the other president, with the executive order of the next president. But if it goes through Congress, this is a whole different deal. This is a law. This is a law of the land, and the law must be observed no matter who comes to power, no matter what the next Congress is, no matter who's the next president is. First of all, any kind of security guarantees must go through Congress. This is number one. And what security guarantees can be there? Of course, first of all, we all know and we all saw and we'll remember the beginning of the war, how in 2014 Putin claimed that there are no Russian forces there, and those people that are occupying Crimea and occupying eastern territories of Ukraine are the local people, and those that military uniform, as Putin put it, can be bought at any store around the corner. At any corner store, you can buy the military uniform. Yes, probably tanks also, but okay, I even don't want to comment on that. But though we already saw that lie, that blatant lie that Putin himself later on said was a lie. He admitted that these were Russian forces actually occupying Ukrainian territories. So after having that history of lying, and this is just one of many examples, many examples, and let's remind everyone, and let's all remember, although it's terrible to remember those people, but the representative of the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs just a day and a few days before the war, she said that she was late for the press briefing because she needed to check whether Russia already attacked Ukraine or not. Oh, we didn't attack Ukraine. She laughed about it. She was joking about it as if it was BS, as if it was not true. Now, what all European intelligence services were saying, that Russia is preparing an attack. So we've seen those lies. We've seen them lying time and time again about Ukraine, about everything else. So how can any security guarantees be guaranteed if there are no international observers? Of course. Well, as first things first. Any security guarantees must go through American Congress and must become a law. Second of all, there must be international forces that observe what is happening on the border. Because we know there can be many provocations, and Russia is very good at provocations. That there are no provocations. That there are no. Of course, they can say that, for example, Ukrainians attacked Russian forces, or Ukrainians did something, and this is why Russia must continue the war. No. There must be international peacekeeping force or international observers, whatever you call them. It doesn't matter. The main thing is for them to be there. And of course, with the coalition of the willing and with the Pearl Initiative, the third thing that must be there is financial support. Is financial support for the newest weapons, is financial support for the newest training of Ukrainian soldiers, and is the full support of introducing the newest technologies, including AI technologies, in the military forces of Ukraine. So the third thing is the financial part of it all that must be guaranteed by the European countries, by the coalition of the willing.
Not only financial support, but also, as we understand, sanctions. EU foreign ministers failed to reach an agreement on the 20th package of sanctions against Russia. EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs, Kaja Kallas, announced following a meeting of the bloc's foreign ministers the 20th sanctions package was intended to mark the fourth anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. However, Hungary blocked it at the last moment, demanding that Kiev restore the transit of Russian oil. What does the failure to adopt the 20th sanctions package reveal about unity within the European Union? How significantly does Hungary's position undermine the EU's leverage over Russia?
Well, this is all about the elections. And this time I'm not talking about the American elections, weirdly. I'm talking about the elections in Hungary. April, Viktor Orban is showing off as a strong man right now. Oh, he's such a strong man. He can say what he wants to the European Union and they will obey. So this is only have to do with the politics, the domestic politics of Hungary. He wants to show off as that strong man. He wants to show off as someone who is dictating to the European countries what they should do and what they should not do. So this is all about winning an election in Hungary. And of course, coming back to your question about the unity, we see the unity in the coalition of the willing, but we see different countries of the European Union looking at Ukraine differently, in a different way, in a different manner. And it's not easy, of course, to unite all those very, very different countries. Some of them, like Spain or Portugal, are so far away from the front line that they think it will never, ever come to them. But we understand that when you're dealing with the people like Putin, no one can predict what will touch who and when. So some countries that are reluctant to give more support for Ukraine, meaning financial support for Ukraine or support for weapons for Ukraine, because buying weapons from the Americans, and some countries that want to gain political points within their domestic political system, like Viktor Orban. They are playing this card of vetoing any decisions in order to show off themselves as someone very, very powerful. Yes, this 20th package would have been symbolic, of course, would have been important, of course, but it's the time of the election, and Viktor Orban, first of all, he wants to win the election, and then he wants to get something from the European Union in return. So most probably we can come back to discussing this 20th package after the election, after April, if Viktor Orban stays in power or if someone else comes to power. And then if Viktor Orban stays in power, first of all, he can unblock it immediately. Maybe this will happen. Or he can ask something from the European Union in return in order to unblock it. We've seen how Viktor Orban sometimes go out to drink some tea. First of all, he says that he will vote, he will veto. And then while the voting is happening, he goes out to drink some tea. So he might go out to drink some tea, but only after April, only after his election, and it's his goal and only his goal right now to win the election. Nothing else matters right now. It's too little time until the election, less than 2 months until the election. So this has everything to do with what is happening inside Hungary right now.
Alexandra, and a little bit more about the United States of America. You also mentioned that the United States aims to end the war in Ukraine by July 4th. Bloomberg reports President Donald Trump intends to broker a deal between Ukraine and Russia before hosting celebrations marking the 250th anniversary of U.S. independence. However, there are no indications that Vladimir Putin is prepared to agree to any settlement that does not meet his core demands. What do you think about this more? Is the proposed timeline driven more by political symbolism than by conditions on the ground? What do you think?
Well, of course, this would be great symbolism, a great symbol of presidential power and of American power if Trump can end the war in Ukraine. And of course, this will get him the opportunity to say, look, who is to blame? The Democrats. The war started with Obama. He didn't react enough on the occupation of Crimea, of the occupation of eastern territories of Ukraine. He didn't react enough in 2014. So he is to blame. Democrats are to blame. They were in control of the Congress. They must have been more reactive to the occupation. Well, it's I must say that I agree with President Trump here, and definitely this is something history. We cannot as we cannot predict the future, we cannot change history. But we understand that there was not sufficient reaction to the occupation of Ukrainian territories by Russia in 2014. So this will give the opportunity to President Trump to say these were the Democrats in power. The Democrats started the war. The full-scale invasion happened also with the Democratic president in power, Joe Biden. So he was a weak president. So that is why, look what is happening with the Democrats. When the Democrats are in power, there are wars happening all over the world. People are dying. And look what is happening when the Republicans are in power. The collapse of the Soviet Union, of course, you can remember about that, Ronald Reagan, and the ending of the war in Ukraine. If this is going to happen, of course, this will bring political points to President Trump. This wouldn't mean that the Republicans will win 100% in Congress during the election, during the midterm elections, but this will definitely give them some percentage points. At the same time, I think it's necessary to look how realistically Trump sees this ceasefire or a peace, even a peace deal. We will see that in a few hours. We will see that during the State of the Union address. We will see that when President Trump talks to the Congress. If he will talk a lot about Ukraine, this will mean that the stakes are high. His stakes are high. If he reminds Americans about the war in Ukraine, if he talks about it a lot, this will tell us that he is planning on ending it by July 4th. If he will just merely say that he stopped 9 wars and there is another war that is so difficult to stop, but he's working on it and that's it, this will tell us that the sources might be exaggerating. This will mean that President Trump doesn't believe that there is this opportunity, because if he believes that he can end the war, if he believes that this is reality, then of course he needs to talk about it. He needs to advertise it, talk about it. If he doesn't believe that it's true, he needs to put it way back to the background. He doesn't need to talk about it. Of course, there can be negotiations happening. Steve Witkoff needs the negotiation to go on there because he needs the negotiation to go on in order to talk about financial negotiations in parallel. How else would he communicate with Kirill Dmitriev under the pretense of talking about the war? So it would be difficult to say that, oh, I'm going to Moscow to talk about business with Russia. No, I'm going to Moscow to talk about peace deal with Russia, but actually talking about business. So that pretense of negotiation is needed for Steve Witkoff and for some other people close to the White House, or rather close to the Trump organization, close to Donald Trump Jr., in order to talk about business with Russia, potential business deals that will come after the end of either the end of the war or with a ceasefire, at least with a ceasefire. But let's see what President Trump says during the State of the Union address. I think that this will tell us a lot, whether those sources that are saying that President Trump is absolutely sure that he can end the war by July 4th are true.
Alexandra, thank you so much for this conversation. Finally, I would like to say that in 2022, we stopped the enemy. In 2026, we're still standing here on our land, and it's true. And we will endure, because we already endured when no one believed in us and we will prevail, because for us there is no other scenario. Alexandra Filippenko, political analyst and member of the European Leadership Network, was with us today. Thank you so much again for this insightful discussion and for sharing your professional perspective. See you.
Thank you for having me. See you.